Hey all, it's Matt, your average gamer. For this build video, we've got two different builds for you, Dragonfire Samurai and Bloodflame Samurai. These are really fun and use Sword Dance as the main Ash of War. Before we continue though and jump into a new journey, a quick mention to ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN is the VPN I trust and it can help keep your browsing safer and more private. There's a discount link in the description below with 3 extra months free. First one up here is Flaming Strike on the double Nagakibas, which is a variant of the first build here. The first build has 2 parts. For the first one, we've used Flaming Strike in combination with any incantations you want to use. The extra fire coat and flame arc gives us between 6 and 700 AR in the Nagakiba. This is a powerful combination that can crush bosses fairly easily. If you want a more jump attack pure fire build, I'll leave a link in the description for that build too, although it uses the bandit curved swords in that one. For the Nagakiba, it's a fun and powerful combination, as landing Flaming Strike can do substantial damage while also giving you that extra fire damage coat that will boost your weapon's AR for 40 seconds. As you can see, we're mixing in dragon incantations like Dragon Ice here as well. Yes, it's a really fun combination build, and this is part 1 of 2. The first one has 2 parts, and then there's a second build in this video as well. Now for the first part here, Flaming Strike is an awesome Ash of War, and in the next part, we're going to concentrate on Sword Dance. Since you're able to see here, we started a new journey taking on the Tree Sentinel first while trying out this variant. By the way, the first 2 here that are 2 parts obviously can be done with the same stats, and then the second build in this video has its own stats entirely. These aren't really meta builds. Yes, they can be overpowered because Faith is very powerful in general. It's something you can use to destroy a lot of bosses, as we're going to go on with Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, different incantations here. You're going to see here we can show off Flaming Strike, and then we're going to go over the build, stats, equipment, everything you need to know. I had several people asking me how to get fire on the offhand sword for Xbox. That's Y and LB, and then Y and RB back, and you have to activate both. We have 2 Nagakibas with Flaming Strike and Flame Art Affinity. We have Radahn's chest piece on the Samurai set, Land of Reeds, Shard of Alexander, Fire Scorpion Charm, Ritual Swords Talisman, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, the Faith tier, and the Fire tier as well. Let's get into stats. By the way, if you're wondering how I sound, I've had this allergy cold thing for like a week now. I don't know what's going on with that, but yeah, it's been a little bit annoying when I go to record. Now for stats, it's going to be the same stats as part 2 of this build. We're Faith based. We have 60 Vigor, 60 Faith. If you use the Faith tier, you'll get to 70. For buffs on that one, by the way, we used Hellish Brewery and Golden Val. How? Because it's going to boost your incantations. Now, we're going to show you where to get Sword Dance. You can also use Flame Grant Me Strength, though, since you're doing fire and physical, but keep in mind that it'll only boost fire incantations. Now, where to grab the basics, the first one here that we're looking for is Sword Dance, and you can get the Sword Dance Ash of War in Liurnia of the Lakes near the first Minor Erd tree. This is something you can get fairly early in the game. It's a really fun and cool Ash of War. And I'm going to show it on the map here in a second exactly where it is, but basically the Minor Erd tree, the left one, the closer one when you're in Liurnia of the Lakes, you can go around it, and there's like this little alcove with, I believe, Road End's Catacombs is in there, and yeah, you can pick it up right there from a Teardrop Scarab. There it is on the map there, in Liurnia of the Lakes. The Nagakiba can be grabbed early too. If you want to kill Hunter Yura, you can nab it in the ravine in Limgrave. This is one of a few locations you can get the Nagakiba. As you progress further in the game, it can end up at the Dragon Burnt Ruins as well. To be honest though, fighting Hunter Yura isn't too bad at all, as he acts just like any other NPC invader type enemy. He mainly does thrust attacks. I obviously used Sword Dance here and it worked quite well, but you can bait his thrust attacks and punish him fairly easily. And after we took him down here, you can see that the Nagakiba drops here, and this is one of the options to get it early. As I mentioned though, if you don't get it early, it can end up in his campsite or at Dragon Burnt Ruins. Now up next, continuing on the Faith build, is our Dragonfire Samurai vs Margit. Since we've started a new journey, we're going to be taking on some early and mid-game bosses. Here we main the Gravelstone Seal and offhand Dragon Communion Seal for the boost. Now, most of the time you'll see dragon builds with bleed because they go together quite well. However, I wanted to go off meta a bit and instead opt for one that I had more fun with. This way, the build is set up. We can use different incantations you want while mixing in Flame Art Sword Dance on the Nagakiba. And we were able to beat up Margit pretty easily using Nagakiba with Sword Dance. The combination goes together quite well, and you're going to see as the video continues that Sword Dance is quite good. Godrick was next up, and we're going to start here with some Dragon Ice. This way we can throw in some incantations as far as the Dragon incantations, and then the fight would continue to go on with Sword Dance. I'm starting to really like flame art builds because the incantation possibility is endless. Once your faith is between 60 and 80, you'll do great incantation damage while also having substantial AR on the weapon as well. This build utilizes the same stats as the Flaming Strike version, as that was another option to use for your Ash of War. Godrick, like all bosses on New Game Plus 7, has more HP and can be a bit tanky. However, his moveset is still the same and fairly easy. He's got very slow and predictable attacks that can often easily be avoided, even if I did frequently get greedy and throw in more attacks than I should have. Sword Dance is really fun to use. It even has an extra slam down at the end you have to hit the Ash button again for, or you can do the quicker version which builds up successive attacks. They can be boosted by the Thorny tier, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, and Melissen's Prosthesis, much like Double Slash. If you actually wanted to use Double Slash with this build, it would fit in really well. I'm just having more fun with Sword Dance because I never really used it before. I hadn't used it much. I knew it was decent, but trying it out on this build, I realized it is quite good. It does build up on the successive hits and attacks, and you can build up a lot of damage with this Ash of War, and it goes well with our Flame Art and Incantations. And hey, it fits the samurai scene too. Obviously Double Slash would fit that samurai scene as well, but being able to do a faith-based samurai was really cool. And as I mentioned in this video, the second part, probably the more damaging one, is going to be the Bloodflame Samurai, which also uses Sword Dance, and that can be a really powerful one with decent bleed build-up. Yeah, as I mentioned before, I'll mention this again. These aren't the most meta builds, but they can be quite good. You can make them work. I really love building around this stuff to kind of make faith-based builds where you can do a ton of different things. And then we're going to use Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike here, as you can see. The variety is endless while still rocking a Flame Art High AR Sword Dance build. It's really cool that you have this much variety when using Faith. For the record, I only swapped out one talisman. Instead of Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, I used the Ritual Swords talisman. Everything else was based on the same build for the Sword Dance build, and I was still able to two-shot essentially that dragon with just 2 buffs in Golden Vow and Hellish Reburie with Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. The Magma Worm was mostly the same deal, as we were able to go Dragon Cult Samurai again and do a lot of damage to the dragon. The reason, by the way, that I chose the name Dragon Fire Samurai was because of the Flame Art combination with Dragon Incantations, both Dragon Cult and Dragon Communion. Keep in mind though that this is faith-based, so you have the variety to do whatever you want with the build, adding in various fire incantation works too. I preferred Dragon Ice and Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike to use with my Samurai setup. It turned out really fun, and honestly, doing some off-meta stuff by mixing it up felt really good too. Sword Dance is really good. I think I mentioned that already though. It does solid damage with Flame Art. The Red Wolf of Radahn would end up standing no chance against our Fire Faith build, and was able to consistently pressure the boss with Sword Dance. This is a really enjoyable Ash, and you'll likely find yourself liking it for most battles once you get used to it. It's quite good. Yeah, I found myself having more fun with these two builds, this couple of builds, because obviously the first one has 2 variants, and then we have the second one with Bloodflame that I've had in a while. I wanted to do 2 really fun builds. It's actually a workup for the most fun build I've done ever, which I've started. That's going to be in a different video, but these are really enjoyable to use. Before we complete part 1 by putting together the Dragon Incantations, Lightning, and Sword Dance against Radahn, I took on Rennala. Rennala for me has to be beaten most playthroughs because I need to respec often, but she's rarely appeared in my videos. The main reason is most of the time I go and beat her first so I can respec for any future boss. Phase 1 is kind of self-explanatory. As anybody knows this fight, you have to go around, basically crack 3 of these bubbles on the junior scholars here or whatever they are, and then after that she's going to fall down and we're going to do a whole bunch of damage to her with Sword Dance. Most of the time, whatever build you're using, you're going to be able to phase her fairly quickly if you're on New Game Plus and beyond. Get phase 1 over with and move on to phase 2, which, while not that difficult at all, is definitely more difficult than phase 1. When starting phase 2, my recommendation is to get close to her and basically continue to pressure her. She has low poise. She's going to spam magic at you. By the way, she hasn't been in my videos a lot, so I figure I'd get a couple tips on her, even though she's fairly easy to beat in terms of her poise because she can frequently be interrupted. Everything that you do to Rennala essentially interrupts her actions, and the closer you are, the more pressure you can build up on her, the better the fight's going to go. She's going to summon a whole bunch of stuff, but don't worry about it. You can actually run away from them until they disappear, and then go back at her and fight her again, taking down her HP fairly quickly. By the way, if I didn't mention it yet, if you followed me to this point and you aren't subbed, hit that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss out on all the Elden Ring builds and content. It's been really fun doing these. A little bit of change up on the builds in this video, that's for sure. And honestly, I can't wait for DLC. We're going to cover that like crazy too when it does finally come out. Speaking of that, if you didn't see my video on my estimate of when DLC is going to drop, I'm still thinking early to mid 2024 based on how everything is going so far. Given the fact that we have Armored Core in just a little over a week, I think that's going to go out for a little bit. Then before the end of the year, we'll get an announcement date, and then early to mid 2024 is probably when DLC is going to drop for Elden Ring. And goodbye, Rennala. We're going to be moving on to Radahn, where we're going to put together everything. For Radahn, we're going to mix up everything we've done so far using a couple dragon incantations, Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, and then Sword Dance with Flame Art Affinity. This is going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to get into this fight. Now this is the battle where we put everything together, literally comboing everything we've done so far. First up, I like to bait his one specific combo. The longest combo he has, especially when you first approach him, is extremely punishable at the end. This is a combo that you could immediately punish afterwards, as it has a long animation at the end of the combo. And we started with some Dragon Ice here, as you can see, and we're going to be mixing in Sword Dance, as we mentioned in Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. We're using 2 Gravelstone Seals, by the way, for the boost for Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, and not really changing much else with the build, although we did use the Ritual Swords Talisman instead of Rotten Wing Sword Insignia to get damage out of both the Weapon Art and Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. Now, before he phases, we're going to go Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike again, because we want to do as much damage as possible. We want to make phase 2 relatively short. The shorter we can get for phase 2, the better, because this is where he's going to have a lot more high damaging attacks and some that are a little bit harder to avoid. Avoid the obvious meteor in the sky and then pressure him immediately when he comes back down. I usually end up going right up to him. At this point, use any incantations you like, and then you can finish off Radahn with Sword Dance quite easily. Keep in mind, his phase 2 moveset hits really hard, but if you follow this build, you'll have 60 Vigor and decent defense too. Yeah, we went with 60 Vigor for both builds so that we'd have a good amount of HP, and then we went with decent armor as well. We have over 51 poise for both builds. We use the same armor set. That way we can mix in the Lands of Reed set with Radahn's chest piece, and that'll give us 52 poise, which essentially gives us over 51. And if anybody knows this, the poise markers are 51, and then I believe the next one's like 100 or something like that. But generally speaking, for PvE, anything above 51 is enough poise. That's a solid amount of poise. It's going to stop you from getting knocked down from basic attacks. Keep in mind, some bosses have infinite hyper armor attacks, will they'll knock you down no matter what poise you have. And for buffs, we're drinking your tier. We're using Golden Vow. We can throw in Blessings of the Earth Tree because we're faith-based to give us some extra HP. Then we're using Howl of Shabriri to generically boost everything by 25%. Then if you're using Dragon Incantations, we can use the Gravelstone Seal and the Dragon Communion Seal offhand for the boost. Or if you're using Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike, you can use 2 Gravelstone Seals for the boost there. And then obviously we have Sword Dance as well, which is really fun to use. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have 2 Nagakibas. You can use the starting katanas too. We have Sword Dance. We have 2 Gravelstone Seals. We're doing Ancient Dragon Lightning Strike. 1 in a Dragon Communion Seal for Dragon Incantations. This is faith-based. Radahn's armor set, Land of Reed set. We hit 51 poise. Shard of Alexander, Fire Scorpion Charm, Ritual Sword Talisman, or Rotten Wing Sword Insignia if you're using Sword Dance more. Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, the Fire tier, and the Thorny tier. Let's get into stats. Now for stats, it's the same exact stats for the Flaming Strike variant on this build, and we are 60 Vigor, we're at 60 Vigor, 60 Faith, and then don't worry about the Arcane points, they're just from my starting class. Everything else though is built around the Nagakiba's base stats, good amount of Endurance, and a little bit of Mind. Next up is the better of the 2 for damage, and the one that's closer to a meta build, Bloodflame Samurai. This uses Sword Dance as well, since that's our build video Ash of War that we're highlighting. This is a dexterity build that adds bleed to Bloodflame Blade, making the combination with Sword Dance deadly. There's no incantations here, as we are a dexterity focused and bleed build, but we're making the most of Sword Dance. Now, if you do want to go meta, or at least be better in PvP, you can actually go with Arcane, an Occult Weapon, and then use the Dragon Communion Seal for your Dragon Incantations. But for this was mainly a Sword Dance, dexterity focused build that adds bleed with Bloodflame Blade. But for PvE, running this as a dexterity build is fine. You can run the same basic setup with /2 and get a lot of damage. So pretty much the discount Rivers of Blood at that point. But for me, I really like Sword Dance with Bloodflame Blade. You can get that bleed build up, get those successive hits in, and use a cool Ash of War that has a little bit of style too. Yeah, this one you're going to get bleed out of. You're going to get good damage with dexterity scaling and an A scaling and keen for the Nagakiba, and then you pretty much get everything you need out of Swords Dance with the successive attack builds up and makes for an awesome Bloodflame Samurai setup. Last boss we face in this video is Morgott, where we can show off the good damage from our Ash in combination with the bleed build up. As we mentioned, we're getting around 85 bleed per hit while also getting that A and dexterity on the Nagakiba and keen affinity. By the way, the starting katana can be better, but it has less reach, so I opted for the Nagakiba. Morgott wouldn't give me too much trouble, as we have the shackle and have less HP going into phase 2. Once again, like Radahn, we're going to try to make phase 2 short. In this case, he ended up with a little more HP than I usually give him, but we're able to get in a decent amount of damage, get some bleed build up. I think a bleed proc in there as well, and we're going to continue this fight with Swords Dance. During phase 2, as you probably already know, he's a lot faster, but keep in mind, on New Game Plus 7, Morgott is still a glass cannon, so anytime you're doing damage to him, it's going to bring down his HP rather quickly. In the end, I really enjoyed a Bloodflame Samurai with Sword Dance. It was an awesome take on the Ash that I rarely use. In the end, it ended up being a really fun combination. I like both these builds, including the beginning build with the Flaming Strike variant, although like I said, I've been using Flaming Strike a lot lately, so it was nice to mix that up. I hadn't done a build for Sword Dance yet, and I ended up really liking the Ash of War. It felt like it had a lot of variety. It was really fun to use, has a little bit of finesse to it, and you can use it with different affinities and make it into a very solid build with that Ash of War. Alright, for buffs, we're going to drink our tear first, and then afterwards we're going to use Golden Vow. Then we're going to use Bloodflame Blade, because that lasts a minute. Flame Grant Me Strength is going to be the last thing that we do there, and then we can fill up some FP. Then we can use Sword Dance. You get that follow-up slam if you want to hit the button again, or you can just hit it quickly for the successive attack build-up. Let's get into equipment. For equipment, we have the keen Nagakiba with Sword Dance. We're using Bloodflame Blade. We had a Weightless Seal just for buffs. Same set of armor on Shard of Alexander, Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, Faith Tier, Thorny Tier. Let's get into stats for this awesome setup. Now for stats, it's a dexterity build. We have 65 dexterity. By the way, if you're using Millicent's Prosthesis, you'd get that to 70. And then if you wanted to throw in the dexterity tier, you could do that too, and that would get you to 80. But for me, 65 was plenty of damage. And then of course we have 60 vigor, same amount of mind and endurance, relatively speaking. And all around, it ends up being a solid, powerful build with Bloodflame Blade and Sword Dance. Thanks for watching this one. This one was certainly of the less meta variety, but it was fun. At this point, I'll be doing some mix-up builds like these ones as well, so we can keep Elden Ring fun and play the game however we like. In the end, the most meta thing in PvE, after all, is what weapons and builds you enjoy using the most. And as always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, check out all the awesome builds that are on my channel, and I will catch you guys over there. Thanks for watching.